Greetings, my name is Lucas Gomes, and I work at the post office here in Rio Grande do Norte. That day began like so many others, simple deliveries aboard my motorcycle. However, I could hardly foresee the unique narrative I was about to unravel. Only one last destination remained, nestled in a modest inland locality. The dwelling, however, remained elusive. Inquiries to the local residents resulted in emptiness. No one could identify the addressee of the package. I was already entertaining the idea of giving up when my eyes caught a young man opening a rustic wooden gate, the entrance to what looked like a small farm. I approached him, seeking information about the name on the package. His answer was direct. Yes, I know him. He's my father. You can come in. He's at home. I passed through the gate, and a lady, busy sweeping the front area, called for her husband, who soon approached. I carried out the delivery. The clock showed approximately noon. The sun beat down relentlessly. As I turned the ignition of the motorcycle to continue my route, the man's voice echoed. "Where do you think you're going, young man?" "I need to move on, sir. This was my last delivery. Now I'm going to have lunch." "Negative," the man retorted, firmly. "Get off that machine and come share the meal with us. I don't accept refusal. Otherwise, I'll be forced to stop you with a shot before you cross that gate." I cast an apprehensive glance at the old man, who broke his serious demeanor. With a loud laugh, accompanied by his wife, I was welcomed to their table. It was in this peculiar setting that I was introduced to the most eerie story my ears had ever heard. The meal continued at the table, in the company of the man, his wife, and an elderly lady, the matriarch of the family. A few moments later, two young men in their 20s entered the residence. The host inquired, "And?" "Nothing new," they replied, taking their seats at the table. "He'll be back. That pest always comes back," said the homeowner, fixing me with an inquisitive look. "Do you believe in werewolves?" The urge to smile was almost uncontrollable, but I restrained myself under the expectant gazes of everyone present. "No, I don't," I replied with conviction. The man smiled as he chewed and continued. "Well, around these parts, every now and then one shows up. In fact, he paid us a visit yesterday, taking a year-old sow of mine. We only found the pieces about 50 meters from the fence. And the most curious thing is, the one who transforms is from my own bloodline," he concluded with a dry laugh. "Seriously?" I questioned incredulously. "Are you perhaps joking with me?" "I'm not joking, young man. He's my cousin, the son of my mother's sister, that lady here at the table. For many years he lived in that house back there, in the times when his mother was still alive. Since our youth, he had the habit of disappearing for countless days, causing great apprehension, especially due to his mother's delicate health. He would spend weeks without news, and when he reappeared, he invariably bore dirt and injuries. Our questions about his whereabouts were always ignored, replaced by a stern look and the assertion that his life belonged to him. One certain night I was returning from my then-girlfriend's house already late. It had been a few months since my aunt had passed away, and my cousin lived alone in the old house. After closing the wooden gate, I was walking towards my house when a sound of falling objects echoed from that house in the back. I walked cautiously and picked up a piece of wood lying on the ground. Given my cousin's propensity to wander off, I considered the possibility of an intruder who had entered the property from the rear. It was then that I saw a colossal shadow jump out of the house window, disappearing towards the woods. I ran to the residence, entering through the window. When I turned on the light, the scene was one of complete disarray, objects scattered everywhere, but my cousin wasn't there. I woke my father, who was still alive at that time, and he witnessed the chaotic scene. We spent days waiting for my cousin's return, in the vain hope of finding an explanation for what my eyes had seen. Days later he reappeared, as he usually did, filthy and covered in scrapes. My father confronted him, demanding explanations for his disappearances and his deplorable state upon returning. He, however, remained silent, beginning to gather his clothes into a bag. Before leaving, he only uttered, "I'll be back." Since then, periodically, we lose animals around here. Unearthly growls echo in the early morning hours, and our dogs chase something invisible with insane fury. One certain night, our neighbor had to go to the hospital and woke up in the quiet of the night. He got on his motorcycle and was riding down this front road when he encountered a gigantic black canine in front of the wooden gate that my son opened for your entrance. He reported that when the motorcycle headlights illuminated the creature, it jumped into the property, hiding among the trees. Countless other people claim to have sighted this specter in these parts. Aren't you afraid of being attacked? After all, that thing must harbor great resentment towards your family, I ventured to ask. He knows that if he dares to enter, he'll be greeted with buckshot. That's why he doesn't dare. Back in the day, the wash basin was outside the house. I always got up very early. One morning I prepared coffee and opened the door to discard the grounds and wash the cloth. As I turned on the faucet, I felt a presence approaching. When I turned around, there he was, a humanoid being covered in fur, with prominent teeth, and growling menacingly. He was about 10 meters away. I only had time to turn around and lock myself inside the house. I didn't even close the door carefully. I ran straight for the 12-gauge shotgun I own. But the beast is cunning. He knew I would be lying in wait. His appearances are sporadic, you understand? But we know that this creature is my cousin. That was the reason for his disappearances and his returns with injuries, the transformation into this demonic being. I suspect that my deceased sister sensed this metamorphosis of her son, but we don't know the catalyst and the reason for his condition. I absorbed this extraordinary narrative of this family, finding no immediate words. While savoring a coffee, preparing for departure, the homeowner and his sons found amusement in my declaration that I would no longer make any deliveries to their residence. I left that place with a completely altered perspective on the world, on the thin line between the tangible and the imaginary. I deemed it improbable that the man had concocted such an intricate and detailed story just to frighten me. Since then, I have adopted a more cautious stance, especially when driving at night. After all, if it's all just a fabrication, I lose nothing by being careful. And if the truth lies in his words, I will be, in some way, better prepared. In any scenario, caution will not harm me. Good night. Dear listeners, my name is Paulo Brito, and my wife is Mariana Brito. Today, our home is once again in Campinas, but the story that profoundly marked us occurred in Lorena, in the interior of São Paulo. I own a modest beverage depot in Campinas, and the news of Mariana's pregnancy brought immense joy, but also apprehension, given the high-risk nature of the pregnancy. Our previous residence, on days of events with fireworks and intense noise, posed a challenge, as any fright could be harmful. My brother, my business partner, kindly offered us a house he owned in Lorena. The tranquility of the place would be ideal for the last months of pregnancy, while he would take over the management of the business until our return. I spoke with Mariana, and she agreed. We packed our lives and went to the house in Lorena, seeking serenity. But what we found were the clutches of fear and despair. The house stood as the last one on a dead-end street. My brother had lived there for 2 years during his marriage, and after the separation, he returned to Campinas, renting out the property sporadically. The place exuded peace. The house, bathed in natural light through its wide windows, seemed a perfect refuge for a healthy pregnancy. The first days passed harmoniously. We received visits from family and Mariana's friends who approved of our new home. Everyone agreed that the house was indeed a find, 20 days passed in relative calm. One certain night we went out for dinner and returned around 9 in the evening. I stopped the car and got out to open the gate when a piercing scream from Mariana echoed from inside the vehicle. I ran to check what had happened and saw her pointing towards the house door. My eyes didn't catch anything unusual. "There was a man there in front of the door," she whispered, her voice trembling. "When you opened the gate, he went through the wall and disappeared. I entered the house cautiously, fearing a possible intruder, but the absence of hiding places made the sighting of any intruder inevitable." I returned to the car, parking it in the garage. I accompanied Mariana to the bedroom, trying to calm her down. I stroked her hand until sleep enveloped her. Then I decided to inspect the surroundings of the house again. Upon opening the door, I encountered high walls and barbed wire, barriers that would hinder any attempt at invasion. I returned to the bedroom and lay down, but that night was only the prelude to horrors. Around 3 in the morning, I was awakened by Mariana's piercing screams. She pleaded for help with such great desperation that I instantly jumped out of bed. When I turned on the light, I found her huddled in a corner of the room, a sheet twisted around her neck, tears streaming down her face. I hugged her, and between sobs she murmured, "Something was on top of me, trying to suffocate me, saying it would take me with it." "Who?" I asked, my heart racing. "Who tried to take you?" "I don't know, something dark that looked like a child but with a demonic face. It was trying to strangle me with the sheet and started pulling me, saying it would take me." I tried to calm Mariana down, but her extreme nervousness would not be good for our baby. I spent the rest of that night on vigil, watching over her until dawn. With the first rays of sun, we left the house seeking refuge in a long walk. By nightfall, Mariana's countenance had calmed down, and we returned home for the night. Then it was my turn to be the target of an inexplicable entity that penetrated the locked residence and reached my room. I immersed myself in reading until Mariana fell asleep. I lay down beside her, and sleep was beginning to envelop me when I caught the sound of dragging footsteps approaching through the hallway. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but when I heard the footsteps inside the room, I felt an icy presence ascend the bed and hover over my body. A paralyzing fear gripped me. Efforts to move were futile. Attempts to scream were silenced. Then, my eyes captured a dark figure, spectral hands enveloping my neck, the imminent suffocation. Panic consumed me. Every attempt to break free was useless. It was in that moment of absolute terror that Mariana's distant voice echoed, calling my name. I woke up abruptly, the shirt twisted around my neck, kneeling beside the bed. I related to Mariana the vivid nightmare that had assaulted me, and we decided to leave that place as soon as possible. The next morning, I contacted my brother, narrating the disturbing events. His response was surprising. "I lived in that house for years and never experienced anything like that. Really, something is wrong there. At the beginning of the street lives a pastor. Ask him to say a prayer or something. Tell him you're my brother. He was a good friend and will certainly help you." I followed his suggestion and explained to the pastor the phenomena that were terrorizing us. The pastor, with a serious expression, proposed, "Your wife will stay here with my wife, and we two will go to the house to take a look." So we did. Upon opening the front door, a chair near the table fell over loudly. At that moment, the certainty that an evil force inhabited that home with us solidified. I described the attack I had suffered, the attempted suffocation. The pastor, with a grave voice, declared, "You are in the midst of a true spiritual battle. There is something evil here, and as long as you remain in this house, it will torment you. I strongly advise you to leave this place immediately. I don't know if you can feel it, but I perceive a pressing weight, as if something doesn't want us here." I called my brother at that very moment, but the move could only be arranged for the next day. We were kindly welcomed by the pastor into his home for that night. The next day, we returned to Campinas, and to our great joy, our son was born without any further complications. Years after these events, my brother rented out the house, and a large family moved in. However, they never reported any supernatural occurrences that frightened them. The entity that resided there seemed to have a specific mission, to take me and my wife with it. If we hadn't left that place, I fear it would have succeeded in its intentions. Good night.